As you probably know, ethics is the study of moral principles that should govern our behavior. So one is always interested in which is the best way to behave in a certain situation. And in 1967, a lady called Philippa Foot put together a thought experiment which became widely popular, which is called the Trolley dilemma. And it is a true dilemma. If you Google it, you will see that there is no agreement as to how this situation can be resolved. And I think that in this video, I have the answer to why this happens in our nature and what is the proper understanding of the trolley problem. Now, the trolley problem is the following. Imagine that there's a tramway that is out of control, rolling down a hill, and you are in front of a lever, and the tram is going to slam into 5 people who are working on the rails. And if you move the lever, the tram will swerve to the right, and it will kill one person who is also working on the rails. So the moral question is, would you shift that lever and have one person killed as opposed to 5? So I'll let you ponder about this and see what you think you would do. Now, on the other hand, so just stay with it. On the other hand, there is another scenario. Now, this scenario is the following one. You are standing on a bridge, and you can observe the tram hurtling down, and it's about to slam into 5 people working on the rails. And there is a lever which is just below the bridge, and it can be nudged, but it needs something really heavy to hit it. So there's a fairly hefty fat man who's sitting on the bridge. So if you would give that man a shove, a push, well, he would fall on the lever, and the train would deviate to the right, and 5 persons would be saved, and this rather fat man would die. So once again, what would you do? Would you give him a push, or would you not? Now, when you take this exercise in an auditorium and you present it to an audience, you would observe that with the first supposition, the vast majority would actually move the lever and have 1 man die as opposed to 5 people dying. But when the motion goes to the second scenario, and then people sort of they're not too sure they would be willing to push the gentleman over the bridge and achieve the same result. So it's very interesting that what is the moral decision, the correct moral decision, and the situation is very similar, and yet we make different decisions. And what's happening here, there are 2 major schools of ethics regarding this problem. And one is the utilitarian school of ethics, which was developed by Jeremy Bentham, a philosopher of the 18th century, and John Stuart Mill. And the rationale behind this ethical behavior is that you should judge your behavior on the basis of the overall good. So it's a bit of mathematics, and if I do this and there is an overall and there are more positive aspects than negative aspects, then it's a good move. We should do this. So it's a pretty good idea to throw a bomb in Nagasaki and Hiroshima and kill 250,000 Japanese in 3 minutes, and rather than have 1 million soldiers die with a continuation of World War II. So from a utilitarian perspective, it is perfectly moral to throw the atomic bomb. But then there's another school of thought which was founded by the philosopher Immanuel Kant in the 18th century, and it's pretty esoteric and difficult to read, but he names it the deontological theory of ethics. And the basic understanding there is that our acts, we cannot, we cannot affect somebody else. We cannot alienate somebody else's rights for an ulterior purpose. So in that case, we really cannot harm somebody else, even though the presumed resulting would be better. We just can't do it. So so Immanuel Kant would say that you can't push this person, and no matter what happens. So that's basically the two schools of thoughts. But even so, it's somewhat confusing, and we're not sure what we should do. And we have these situations at all times in the story of our lives, and it is unclear that there's not a clear-cut ruling of how we should behave. So it's a bit of a major ethical problem which has been discussed. Now, this is my theory. Now, listen up. This is very interesting. I think that philosophers and thinkers have been unable to unravel this trolley problem, this ethical problem, because they don't understand the nature of human beings. Now, we human beings, we have a duality within ourselves. We have an eternal soul, or call it as you will, a being, a unity, the universe which is within ourselves. And then we have our biology, and which is our biology is where we recreate our life, and we deal with everyday matters within our tribe and behave like evolutioned sapiens. So we have two aspects to our humanity. One is our certain divinity, if you will, and the other is our biological, we call it ego. So the general consensus is to name these two aspects of our personality as our ego and our being, our true inner self and our egoical behavior to deal with our reality, our social reality. And this concept of this duality of the human being is discussed widely in Indian philosophy and Buddhism, and in the Far East, this is a very common understanding of human nature. In Western culture, this is more unclear. Western culture is more identified with ego, and from a moral and ethical perspective, we tend to be utilitarian. When we are utilitarian in our thinking, we would react from our ego, because ego has been developed, is like a program that we have, human beings. We have social program, a behavioral program, and the object of this program is our survival. So if you want to survive, you will be always on the lookout of what is the best outcome. So you will be always looking at the outcome, the favorable outcome of your decisions. And this is typical of your ego. And that's how we need to survive. So we're going to be considering the favorable outcome. And but when you somehow manage to dispel and to create a distance from your ego, which is basically an artificial program in our biological brains, when we manage to devoid ourselves from this ego, we come into contact with a very high energy and a very beautiful state of our being, which is our inner self. And this is a totally different dimension. It's a different animal, one from the other, but they both are within ourselves. Much of this has to do with all this conversation that goes on inside our mind. I mean, who's talking to who? And there is a duality, and it's human nature. So when in the first scenario of the trolley problem, it's pretty obvious from the utilitarian outcome, and we just, we shift the lever, we are at a distance from what's happening, and we just push a button, throw a bomb, give an order, and we are away at a distance from what's going on. So our rational mind figures out that this is a good move, and on we go, and we make all these decisions. But now we're standing on the bridge, and we have to actually push with our hands a human being and touch him. Touch him. I mean, we have to touch him. So, I mean, if Hitler would have had to touch and look into the eyes of every single Jew that he chose to massacre in that genocide, one wonders if he could have achieved such a phenomenal genocide. Because one thing is to, with your mind, to make decisions and to sign a paper or to push a lever. And a totally different thing is when you have contact, human contact. At that moment, your being comes into contact with the other party, and decisions become much more difficult. And it's just not so clear that you can follow through. Even though the outcome is clearly advantageous, you still will doubt. So, in my view, the trolley problem is not a problem. It's simply how our human nature is. So we will make utilitarian decisions at a distance, but when we come close up, we will use another area of our knowledge, of our wisdom, and we will act through our being, and our decisions are going to be different. So St. Thomas Aquinas defined prudence as the virtue of adapting universal truths to the specific moment. So I just want to leave you in awareness of this duality within yourself, and just feel it, sense how there are two ways, two human beings, two natures within yourself, and they will behave in different manners, and it's sort of interesting to figure that out and to have it present.